In today's video, we're going to talk about some potential big changes coming to the Calgary Flames this offseason. Plus, could we see a big trade between Vancouver and Washington with two players who might need a fresh start and changes coming to those teams as well. Plus, we also have some more prospect signings, including the Detroit Red Wings signing a pair of prospects. Big news out of Hockey Canada regarding the 2018 World Junior team, and another big news as well regarding Jonathan Toews' potential retirement. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here today. A variety of different types of news. Let's start with some prospect signings. The Detroit Red Wings have made a pair of signings for some potential key members of the future of their team, including William Wallinder, who was a 2020 second-round pick. Big glove shot defenseman, 6'4", 191 pounds, out of Sweden. Played in the SHL this past season. Looks like he's a real solid prospect. A really good potential part of their decor for the future. So nice to get him to jump to North America, get his contract in place, and start his career with the Red Wings organization. Like I said, he's a real big piece of the future there. I think those other guys they have back there, like Skelliter and Evanson and others, the Red Wings, future is really coming together, and he certainly could be a big part of it. They also signed University of Denver prospect Carter Mazur, who was a 2021 third-round pick, a left winger, 6 feet tall, 170 pounds, spent the last 2 years at the University of Denver, had a real solid year this past season, putting up 37 points, which included 22 goals in 40 games played. So we'll see how his jump to pro hockey transitions and how much of the big part of the future he could be as well. Certainly the Red Wings had a good start to the year, certainly have tailed off as of late. GM Steve Yzerman even went on record to say he felt teams like the Senators and Sabres were ahead of them in their rebuilding process. But I think there's still lots to like with what's coming for the future for them between what's there now and what's coming. I think the Red Wings are in pretty good shape, and they'll continue to add to that with more draft picks this coming year. Some more NHL roster moves, including some players being reassigned. The Maple Leafs have reassigned goalie Joseph Woll down to the American Hockey League, so certainly they must be good to run with Samsonov and Murray for the time being. The Senators have also done the same with Dylan Ferguson. He only had 2 starts. Had a big 48 save victory performance over the Penguins, and unfortunately a loss to the Devils. Final score in that game was 5-3. One was an empty netter, so we gave up 4 goals on 34 shots. But overall, in 2 games, I ended up with the goals against of 2.5 and a save percentage of .940. Real solid, jump to the NHL, considering he was given away by the Toronto Marlies American Hockey League team earlier this season. His numbers with Belleville and the Sens organization for the AHL have been real good. Good numbers at the NHL, so certainly that's a hope that he can stick around and make something of his career in Ottawa. That probably indicates that Cam Talbot's likely set to make a return here very soon, and possibly as early as their next game coming up in another day here, I would think. But we'll see. That hasn't been confirmed as of yet. The Red Wings have also made an emergency recall of forward Tero Hirose, and there's also a couple of injury updates in Detroit. There's a possibility that Robbie Fabry may not play anymore this season, and there's a chance that goalie Billy Husso might not either. He's out for a little while, and not quite clear exactly the timeline, so it means maybe he comes back, but it's not a given at this point. And the LA Kings have also reassigned defenseman Jordan Spence back down to the AHL as well. Newly signed forward prospect in Montreal, Sean Farrell, will make his NHL debut tonight as well against the Philadelphia Flyers. A couple other updates. One update to a trade that took place at the deadline involving the New York Rangers and the St. Louis Blues, which brought Vladimir Tarasenko to the Big Apple, obviously a little bit ahead of the deadline. With the Rangers now clinching their playoff spot, there was a conditional 4th-round pick that was sent to the Blues in that deal. Part of one of the conditions was if they made the playoffs, they'd upgrade it to a 3rd-rounder. So that's now officially clinched in. So the Rangers will now be sending a 2023 3rd-round pick to St. Louis. In that deal, they only have 3 picks remaining in the 2023 draft, and 2 of those 3 picks are not even original picks that they held themselves. They're picks that came in other trades. They have 1 pick in the 3rd round and 2 in the 6th, and I believe one of those 6-rounders was one of their actually own picks. The other 2 picks originally came from other teams that came in other trades. So certainly the Rangers are going for a big playoff run. Hopefully the Stanley Cup's what they're aiming for. I don't think they're too worried about this year's draft, considering how many players they have locked up for the longer term part of their future here. And I don't know, they're going to have a quiet draft day That's for sure. But if things don't go well, maybe they'll make some trades and get back into the earlier rounds. We'll have to wait and see how things play out in the playoffs. Now, as I mentioned, we had some significant news came out last night from Hockey Canada. I mean, obviously we know that we talked yesterday that Hockey Canada was being pressured by the Heritage Committee from the federal government to hand over the investigation results from the law firm that was kind of reopening that, what's been worked on for quite some time. They give them, I believe it was 24 hours to hand everything over. I know Hockey Canada was asked for, I believe, for comment, and they basically indicated that as of the time they were making those comments, that they hadn't received like an official request to hand that over, but they said they would do so. But they said that for the time being, they'd also made a internal decision that all members for the 2018 World Junior Championship team that is currently still technically under investigation are basically banned from representing Canada and playing for Hockey Canada at any international tournament. So that roster included a lot of prominent NHL players right now. And there's even players on that roster that I think it sounds like we can safely say had nothing to do with the incident that's being investigated. It was believed that based on police reports, all the information we have, it says that there was CHL players that were involved with this. So some of those players on that roster were not CHL players. They were U.S. college hockey players, such as the top star of that team, Cale Makar. So, at this point, there's a lot of belief out there. Some people like to think, because I've seen a number of comments, not just on my videos, but on so many different social media posts or content around this situation. I know a lot of people out there seem to think they know what happened. I don't think anybody really does, except for the investigators, probably some of the players, obviously, that actually were present and really know. Otherwise, a lot of us that are just fans watching, paying attention, we don't really know what happened. And I know a lot of players tend to get linked into what was guilty and what was not based on what comments they made, which I think is completely ridiculous. I've gone over that before. But this roster is a lot of players. You're talking about Carter Hart in Philadelphia. You're talking about Cale Makar, Dylan Dubé in Calgary, Michael McLeod in New Jersey. You've got Drake Batherson in Ottawa. You got Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas in the Blues organization. Connor Timmins now with the Leafs. Cal Foote, Jake Bean, Alex Formanton, who ended up going to Europe, was not signed by the Senators. A lot of people assume that had to do with the fact that he must be guilty, right? Because they didn't sign him. I don't know if we can completely say that. It does seem odd. And, maybe there's something there that we don't know yet, but we'll have to see. A couple guys in Chicago that used to be in Tampa, Taylor Radich and Boris Kachuk. Brett Howden's another name on that roster. There's a few others too. But, we don't really know, really, what the full deal is. I mean, and we'll hopefully know soon with the Heritage Committee demanding that those investigation results be handed over. And hopefully this can all be closed up and, we'll know the results so we can determine what happened. And if anybody needs to be dealt with either legally or from a, sanction standpoint, then they can do that. Hockey Canada basically said until the investigation is complete and they'll determine if any further sanctions are going to be required on any of these players, then at that point, everybody else will be released and eligible again to play for the Team Canada should an opportunity come up again in the future. But it's such a sensitive issue, and it's such a long-standing investigation. I don't know how long this really takes to go through everything. It's crazy how long we've been waiting to find out who, if anybody, is going to be held accountable, and is there any guilty parties here? So hopefully we'll know that soon enough. Now, as I mentioned as well, Chicago Blackhawks captain Jonathan Toews. A lot of speculation on his future. He hasn't played in quite some time. Didn't get traded at the deadline. Certainly kind of broke his silence, so to speak, and talked to some Chicago-based reporters, talking about a few things, including his future or lack thereof in Chicago. The fact that his longtime buddy and teammate Patrick Kane was traded. Now, he said he's still a little bit in shock that Kane was dealt. Although he said he does look good in the Rangers uniform, as much as it's really odd to see. He's happy that he's happy. But as far as his own future goes, he acknowledged that these are quite likely his final days being a part of the Blackhawks organization. I mean, he's been dealing with, symptoms of long COVID for quite some time. He came back and played and then seemed like he was being affected again. And this could even impact his career. Like, Jonathan Toews is not committing, I don't, by the sounds of these reports and when he's answered questions here, that even playing anywheres next season. So this could be the end of the road for him. I mean, he had a really successful career, both with the Blackhawks and internationally, between the World Juniors, Olympics. He's got several gold medals and Stanley Cups to his name. there's not a lot left for him to accomplish, but if his desire is still there to compete at the highest level and play in the league's, world's best league, then certainly he'll try to do that. He's been practicing with the team lately, showing up and skating more, which is a positive sign. I think for his own sake, he'd probably like to try to get back and play at least a little bit just to kind of, put an end to the storied career in Chicago, knowing that his contract's going to be expiring. And at this rate, like I said, he knows his time is up, and that he didn't say he was going to retire, but he certainly acknowledged that it's a real possibility. So will this be the final days? Will he play? A lot to be seen there, and I certainly hope for his sake he gets to maybe come back and just make it a little bit more on his own terms. But I hate to see players who've had storied careers especially end up having to retire, not by choice, but due to circumstance. And he certainly, even though he's a fairly young man who was, obviously would have been in good health and good shape physically, just goes to show you that certain illnesses can still wreak havoc on a long-term basis. Gary Bettman was in Ottawa last night to take in the Senators game against the Florida Panthers. Of course, the Senators picked up a big victory to close the gap in the wildcard race as well. But that aside, Bettman was there due to the sale process that's undergoing for the Senators. And one of the ownership groups that are in the bidding process to potentially buy the team was present as well. I don't know which group it was, but we do know that several of the groups are going to be making visits to the city to see the team, the arena, and probably talk to the city and talk to Bettman, etc., and just kind of make things a little bit more formal, get ready for the next round of bidding. Bettman did say that they're hoping that everything will be wrapped up and closed by mid to late June, so certainly ahead of July 1st, which has been the target date we've heard from some local reporters there in Ottawa, so that certainly all lines up. Bettman did go on to say as well, talking about the arena and the possibility of them moving to downtown, LeBreton Flats. He said for years that this team needed to move to downtown to make it more viable and to turn a better profit and to make sure that the long-term future of the team is more stable. They needed to get downtown. We've heard those words out of him so many times, and now he's kind of changing his words a little bit. They have the preferred bidder status with the NCC for LeBreton Flats. There's some that are saying, including Bettman, that they wonder if the parcel of land that they're going to be given for that might be too small. To me, it sounds like it's a lot of basically negotiation tactics, a lot of rhetoric, and I don't know if we really want to put a lot into it. There are other pieces of land in the downtown area that they're looking at and they've talked to the mayor about by the looks of things. So either way, I think the new ownership group, whoever they end up being, is going to make a push to get the team downtown. I just think all the stuff we're hearing when it comes to Bettman and LeBreton Flats, I think this is all negotiation tactics, so we'll see where that goes. Could we see a big trade between the Canucks and the Capitals? We've heard from the Vancouver Canucks side of things numerous times, especially Frank Saravelli's been a big one. Most recently, not too long ago, saying that he still feels with everything that's gone on there, the team's playing better under Rick Tocchet. They can see maybe a better season ahead next year with different structure and all that, but he still feels that trading JT Miller would be a big, priority on their list, and I'm doing so before his no trade clause kicks in on July 1st. We got word about getting Kuznetsov, even though he's denied reports. I do not expect him to come out and agree with them and acknowledge the fact, saying, yes, I want on to hear that never happens. So we'll just, kind of take that with a grain of salt and see if we can get a trade between these two teams, maybe involving Miller for Kuznetsov. Obviously, Kuznetsov looking for a fresh start. Certainly lots of Russian players that he would be, the Russian players tend to typically, not always, like to be around other Russian players. Of course, it's nice to have fellow countrymen around, but obviously Kuzmenko's there having good success. They got some good young Russian players like Podkolzin and Kravtsov and stuff. So, obviously there's a good group there that he might be able to fit in at. Obviously, they could go with a number 1-2 center punch down the middle of Pettersson and Kuznetsov, sorry. The big difference here is that Miller has a lot longer term. I don't think it'd be a 1-for-1 trade either. I don't think it's an even 1-for-1 deal. But Washington would be one of the teams with all the flexibility they have in expiring contracts. They could probably handle Miller's contract, and it would certainly help set them up for the foreseeable future. It would take the pressure off of Vancouver. Obviously, Kuznetsov only has 2 years on his contract. I don't know if that's something that we're going to see or not, but you have to think with both players being mentioned in the rumor mill that maybe there's a connection there that could be worked out that might benefit both teams. Like I said, I don't know that it's a 1-for-1 deal. There probably would be other pieces involved, but certainly somebody that, I think both teams would likely have some degree of interest in. If the Canucks really do want to trade a guy like Miller, which is, according to Sarah Valley, something still high on their priority list, they're going to have to bring back a quality centerman to replace him in the lineup, since they don't seem to want to rebuild. So they need a player that's experienced that can do that. He's got less term, a little less money per season, so it gives him a little bit of short-term and long-term cap flexibility. A little bit older, sure, but there's just gets him out of that Miller deal, and it doesn't necessarily set you back right away because you still have a productive top 6 centerman that can come into your organization. So we'll see if that materializes or if those discussions go anywhere. But it is believed that could make sense for both clubs. And in Calgary, Frank Saravalli is also saying to fully expect some significant changes there, whether it be the GM, the coach, or even a player like Kadri. Kadri would be tough to move. I know I've seen another article in The Athletic from, I think it was Eric Duhatchik, asking about if could Kadri be traded. And he said maybe, but not so fast. For one, Kadri was given a no trade, so he's got a lot of control. So obviously, if he doesn't want to go anywhere else, he won't be. So there's that aspect to it. It's a bit of a down season for him, so that's obviously tough to move. He'd have 6 more years of term at $7 million. Not the easiest contract to trade for a player who's been less productive than he was the year before. But at the same time, a lot of people have seen what he can do and might be willing to do that, but it certainly would be complicated to say the least. But given how things have gone with Daryl Sutter, Sarah Valley told a quick story on his show, was talking to Calgary media, talking about how when Jacob Pelche could not get a straight answer when he was going to play, he was called up and just sitting, and finally, apparently one of the more senior players went in and said, listen, we got to know, for his own sake, when is he in so his parents can get here? And when the whole incident that came after, when he was asked about his debut and how he played, and he kind of put on his glasses and he was looking at the paper, what's his number again? And read off his stat line. That's kind of his response to being kind of told and, behind the scenes. So there certainly seems to be a disconnect between the players and the coach. Tree Living's without a contract. Things have not gone as planned this year. We saw major upheaval last year. On paper, looked great. Hasn't worked out. And it would not be shocking at all to see more significant change. So what's it going to be? Is it going to be more in the front office and coaching world that we see those changes, or more in player personnel? Let me know what you think down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.